Okay, this is the weather model discussion here on Monday, October the 31st. Of course, happy trick-or-treat day to everyone out there. If you're making evening plans, we'll talk about that coming up. But this is our behind-the-scenes look at how we've been putting together the forecast as we've gone through the day. This is kind of bonus content, if you will. We typically put this on our social media, Facebook, Instagram, or on YouTube. So again, if you're seeing it there, be sure to give us a like. And again, any questions or comments, be sure to list those below. I've got some pretty good weather as we go through most of the work week, but I tell you what, we've got a major storm system inbound. This will be for Friday and a Saturday with some significant weather changes on the way. So we're going to talk about that. And like I mentioned, we'll take another quick peek at that, trick-or-treat forecast here coming up as well. But first of all, I just went ahead and loaded our live cam. I've kind of liked to start with this recently. Again, you can see a lot of blue sky out there. There will be a little bit of streaked high-level cirrus cloud cover that continues to filter in. But again, man, oh man, otherwise just a really good-looking, fall afternoon out there. Again, the last day of October, soon to turn the corner right into November tomorrow. So a lot of 70s around the region. You can see a few 60s even out in the Permian Basin and, well, even in our Texas Panhandle. Then as you get a little bit further on down to the south around Brownsville, warmer there, 81, and as it turns out, there is even a risk of severe weather down around the Brownsville area we'll talk about coming up. So just a closer inspection here locally, and again, you can see generally a lot of 70s around the area. So like I mentioned, 75 officially here at DFW, so really just a good looking, like I mentioned, late afternoon. Okay, let's go and dive into this and see what we have going on today. And I want to start with this over here. And this is where we're going to switch from, again, our normal TV graphics to the raw data, right? This is what we like to look at in this segment. We like to go over the raw data. And I'm going to take a start here. I'm going to take a look at the upper air chart, right? This is the 500 millibar chart at roughly 18,000 feet. And so this is always kind of the meat and potatoes of the forecast. If you're putting together a forecast, this will give you the overall pattern that you're currently in. And what I mean by that is what we're looking for here are any dips or any ridges, right? Dips in the jet stream, which would be an active storm trough, which could bring you cooler or active weather, and ridges are typically milder and calmer weather. And as it turns out, you can see we've really got two things going on, right? We've got one big dip out across parts of the desert Southwest and even West Texas as well. That's a storm system that's currently moving through the Rio Grande Valley. We'll take a look at that. You can see up across parts of the Midwest, another storm system cutting through there. Obviously, that one pulling away from us here in North Texas, so not much of a concern there. And then we've actually got, it's not even necessarily showing up yet, but it's about to make landfall up in the Pacific Northwest. And it won't look like much initially, but it's going to eventually turn into a fairly significant storm that, again, for us here in North Texas, will be arriving late Thursday, but more so Friday into Saturday. And it's going to bring a fairly decent round of rain, potentially some storms, potentially even some severe weather is what we got to watch as we get into late Friday and into Saturday. We'll talk about that timing coming up. You can also see everything I was just talking about on the water vapor imagery here as well, right? So even as we look at the actual spin, right, this is the water vapor, and you can see the actual spin. A couple things to notice. Number one, notice this little comma head coming into this area of low pressure. Can you see that area of white? It looks like a little tail. That's dry air literally being funneled in to that storm system up there in the Great Lakes region. So even though it's small, it's compact, it's a fairly impressive storm system there, right? And then you can also see the storm system that's currently coming out across parts of West Texas, eventually through the Permian Basin, and more so down towards the Rio Grande Valley. Similar story with the counterclockwise flow. You can see the dry air in yellow, again, being wrapped around into that storm system as well. And then, like I mentioned, we're truly watching up here to our northwest for truly our next storm that is on the way. Like I mentioned, there is some rain down in the Permian Basin so far, or down in the Rio Grande Valley rather. So far it's been pretty spotty, right? We're just looking at the radar composite here. This isn't our traditional radar, obviously, that we use. This is just the radar composite down here. And again, you're just seeing mainly showery activity right now as we go through the day because of the warmer temperatures down along the Rio Grande Valley. There's a little more instability. And again, officially from the Storm Prediction Center, we do have a risk of severe weather. You can see it's primarily right in the deep south of Texas, Brownsville, back over through Padre. Some of those locations would be included in that. You see the darker green showing up. Where you're seeing the lighter green, that would be just general thunder, right? Thunderstorm activity that is not necessarily expected to become severe. And the primary concerns down along the Rio Grande Valley, and believe it or not, there is a very limited, this is a 2%, it's a very limited tornado probability down there. And then again, also a wind probability as well. For anything that bubbles up and then begins to just kind of collapse, there could be some gusty winds associated with that as well. So really across the nation today, again, the only real opportunity of severe weather, like I mentioned, is down in the deep south of Texas. Again, the lighter greens you're seeing elsewhere, the Mid-Atlantic, even the Florida Peninsula. Again, that is just general thunderstorm activity anticipated today. Then as we get into tomorrow, we'll just take a look at the convective outlook here of the next several days. Where's the active weather going to be? Again, tomorrow, no severe weather anticipated, but you are noticing up there across parts of the Pacific Northwest more in the way of general thunderstorm activity possible. And again, it is because that next storm system is beginning to make landfall and move into that part of the country, eventually coming into North Texas. Day 3, in fact, no convective weather expected, right? So day 3 looks pretty quiet. Here's day 4. This is where it begins to get a little more interesting for us, right? Here's the storm system approaching. Could be an opportunity of severe weather. This is a 15% or kind of a slight risk, if you will, from our Texas Panhandle up into parts of, well, the prairies of Kansas, including western Oklahoma. And so here we go, day 5. That's what we're going to be watching. This will be Friday into Saturday. That risk of severe weather comes from West Texas, the big country, and has been expanded now over into parts of North Texas as well. So whenever you get to the day 4 to 8, which we're in right here with the Storm Prediction Center, the data is a little more blended, right? They're not very matter of fact. They don't give probabilities on hail or wind or tornadoes. The reason why you're looking out several days in advance, right? Just like I'm going to show you momentarily, they're using something called a global model, right? The resolution is not that great, but as we get closer in time, right, we're talking about 24, 48 hours out, that's when you're in that high res window data, right, of the model data we look at, and that's when you're truly able to fine-tune your forecast. But right now they're saying there's some bits and pieces coming together the way it looks on the global models that we may have an opportunity of severe weather, and I would definitely agree with that. I'll show you that exactly what we're talking about coming up. Real quick, I do want to touch on this as well, because we do have a new tropical storm, Lisa, and winds are now actually up to 45 miles per hour. She will be making landfall in Central America. And right now the forecast is for her to even strengthen up to a Category 1 storm. So no real opportunity for her coming any further to the north into the Gulf or anything here in Texas that we would be concerned about. But again, she's going to track over pretty close to the Yucatan again. Several storms have had this exact same trajectory as we've gone through the season. But there she is. And again, you can see the very latest guidance there just before she makes landfall. It appears as though she'll be a Hurricane 1. So tropical season not quite done yet. Okay, from there, let's go and switch over to the model. And this is truly kind of the meat and potatoes of the forecast, right? This is the stuff we really want to get into. And in fact, I'm going to go ahead and take this other zoom that we have just to really zoom in here to the model. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to walk you through the next 10 days, right? So first of all, this is going to be a global model. This is the European model. It's my model of choice, right? When we're looking out through the medium range, right? We're talking about 1 to 10 days out. We'll also look at the high res data momentarily out 48 hours. But this is truly going to tell the story. And this is what I'm talking about. This is the area that we need to watch, right? It's going to be this storm system you're going to see coming into the Pacific Northwest. You'll then see it begin to dive down, amplify, and then come out into the southern plains and really the Great Plains as we go over the next several days. Okay, so kind of watch that general area. I'm going to roll this in time. There it is. You can see the trough coming down. You can see it getting deeper. It's amplifying. It's moving through the desert Southwest. And then take a look at this. It comes right out into the southern plains, but notice the tilt on this. That's ever so slightly. It's not as negatively tilted as earlier, but notice how it kind of leans back a little bit, right? As it's coming through, it kind of leans back, right? That's what we call a negative tilt trough. You're always watching for something like that. Doesn't always mean it's going to give you more active weather, but sometimes it can be an indicator of severe weather. And in this situation, even though it's not quite as negative as it was, it's looking a little more neutral, it's still a negative tilt trough coming through. And again, obviously I don't have to tell you, I mean, just by looking at the colors there, the vorticity embedded, this is a big time storm system coming through. And that's one of the reasons why the Storm Prediction Center has, I mean, 7 days out. They don't do that very often. They don't highlight storms 7 days out, but even through the weekend, they were highlighting this storm as an opportunity of active weather in the southern plains. And again, all the data truly is beginning to support that, right? So from there, let me just go ahead and come over to, in fact, let me come over to air mass change, right? We're going to look at the 850 millibar chart, looking for any air mass change over the next several days as well, right? We've got a couple cold fronts that'll be on their way down. There's some cold air. I can tell you there's some cold air truly beginning to brew to our north. And there was one set of data yesterday that was trying to kind of dislodge it, not bring it necessarily into North Texas, but begin to really sweep it down into the Great Plains. And the newest data today is not necessarily suggesting that, but again, you can see the blue colors, the darker blues, over the last couple weeks as we've been doing these segments, they're getting further and further to the south. So the colder air is beginning to build further and further to the south. But let me show you what I'm talking about. Right, so as we go over the next several days, I mean, it's steady as she goes, right? I mean, today through Thursday, I mean, simply put, really nothing going on. We're going to enjoy fine fall weather. Now, here comes that storm trough, right? Now, number one, it's coming in from the Pacific, so we're never really anticipating a big cold blast with that. You can see the front associated with it, though, right? So we will get some cooler temperatures as it does move on through. But it's kind of a one-day wonder with that, right? I mean, Pacific fronts are kind of in, they're kind of out, not really a big deal. But again, notice to the north, cold air continues to brew up there. So big storm system in and out. As we go forward in time, here comes another storm system down, and take a look at that fetch of chillier air. And again, it's coming, and this model, this is the very latest run, and I can tell you the very latest run is beginning to look more like yesterday. That again, that's a true Canadian blast coming down into the northern plains. You can see the front also makes it into North Texas. That would be by the following Wednesday. Again, 1 week, we're talking about a week out, not this upcoming Wednesday, but a week out. The front makes it, and we don't necessarily get the chillier air, we get some cooler air, but again, that's a true cold blast again coming in to parts of the northern plains and the Midwest. So in other words, colder air is now beginning to become a little more active coming out of Canada, right? Climatologically speaking, it wouldn't be favorable for us to get that here in North Texas yet, but anytime you start to get those things dislodged and coming down, you have to watch them carefully, okay? Okay, so let's come back over to the model data here, and we'll look at precip. And this is just going to kind of highlight the storm that's inbound. Right now, number one, that little storm that I was mentioning that's going through the Rio Grande Valley, tomorrow morning, it is going to be lifting off to the northeast. And you can see the rain down along the coast, right? It's not impossible. I put in a 10% probability tomorrow in our eastern counties of a stray shower over there. It's just not impossible. Tonight, our southern counties, it's a 20% opportunity, again, as that's moving through. You can see it's razor close, right? Most of the precip is going to stay well to the south. Could we have a stray shower down there that essentially amounts to nothing? Again, not impossible. It's a 20%. It's kind of like a placeholder, so to speak, right? After that, again, we roll through the rest of the week. Nothing going on, nothing going on. Here we go as we get into Friday, into Saturday. Take a look at the activity begin to develop out there. And again, this is the very newest model run, and I can tell you that, and again, this will continue to seesaw. You don't really, especially this far out, you don't want to get too. You don't want to dive in too deep with this yet, but the latest trend here is a little bit further to the east, closer to the Metroplex, right? Earlier it looked like on Friday storms would form out to the west, and we were going to most likely bring them into the Metroplex maybe like Friday night or very early Saturday morning. This is the latest data that now storms essentially form right over the Metroplex late Friday afternoon and then roll off quickly to the east, right, with maybe a few showers behind it. But right now, the very newest data, again, this can completely change tomorrow morning or tomorrow afternoon. This is not locked in. We're just analyzing the different trends in the models, but the latest trend is essentially developing stuff right over the 35 corridor. And again, we'll look at instability here, but again, the jet stream, all the other dynamics are going to be pretty favorable for severe weather. And again, now that we're talking about potentially stuff developing near the 35 corridor and not necessarily coming in overnight, maybe in a weakening phase, our eyeballs need to get a little bit bigger. Again, now this can still change. Like I said, we'll talk about this tomorrow. It could be completely different. But again, this is one, when you see this, again, it begins to get your attention because you have to watch the trend and see if it's a trend that continues or if it's just a one-hit wonder. And again, later tonight and tomorrow, everything shifts back out to the west. Here's the instability. And again, instability is still looking a little bit better off to our south, but in this situation, there's going to be just enough that, and again, with the dynamics truly of the storm system, with the dynamics, it appears as though severe weather is a real deal possibility. Okay, so that's something we really need to keep our eye on for sure. What I want to do, I want to come over here and just take a look at what the raw data is spitting out, right? I showed you that 850 millibar chart earlier with the colors that were moving around, the air mass change potential. That kind of illustrates what's going on, right? So now we want to put the actual numbers with that. This is the European model here, first of all. Let me go and zoom this back out so you can actually see it. And the European is basically essentially advertising about what we have, mid 70s through the rest of the work week. Thursday, a little warmer ahead of that storm system. There's your Friday, 77, warm, unstable. Storm system comes through. Again, the Pacific front behind it, again, 68 on Saturday. It's a one-hit wonder. We rebound the temperatures, but take a look at that next system, that following Wednesday I was talking about. The Euro is now out of the 60s. It's for a high temperature on Wednesday. Has us all the way down to 57. Again, with the newest data coming in, it's trending chillier, okay? But let's do this. Let's go and look at the Blenda models. This is what I truly forecast off of. This has all the model data, it puts it all together, it weights it, it also plugs in the high-res data, and this is a better representation. This is truly what we forecast off of here. So again, similar story, mid-70s the next several days, everything steady as she goes. Friday, storm comes in, it also has 77, 67 cooler Saturday behind it. Again, all of that basically adds up. It's what the Euro has, it's what we have as well. Mid-70s next week. Now this for Wednesday only has us down to 64, which is about where we are as well. But we'll watch that trend because that latest run of the Euro again brings things in just a little bit chillier. Again, it can always be a one-hit wonder. This data flip-flops every 12 hours, but you have to watch for the consistency as you begin to build your forecast. So again, really a lot going on. This is going to be a fairly active pattern. We have several breaks in between, right? Most of this week it's quiet. As we get into the first part of next week, it's quiet, but we've got two decent fronts on the way. We have one storm system that is, it almost looks like a lock, is going to bring us active weather, heavy rain, and again, the possibility of severe weather I do think is increasing. So we're going to be watching all of that again as we go forward in time. So otherwise, thanks for joining us here on our weather model discussion. Like I said, this is just kind of a rogue thing we do. We like to look at all the raw data, analyze it with you, and try and give you an idea of what's going on. Of course, our true forecast is on our channel. You can watch that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Roku, Apple, Amazon Fire TV. Of course, you can also download our free mobile app, the Weather Tracker TV mobile app, available on Roku, or available on Apple, or also on the Google Play Store. So otherwise, enjoy the rest of your Monday afternoon. And again, we'll do this again tomorrow. Talk to you then.